Welcome back to the Six Steel City Rings podcast. My name is Ray Whiting, and we are in episode 11. With me, I have senior staff writers Leanne Lohman and Mr. Bob Quinn, and I have a special guest. He is the NFL draft guru, Matt Papiernik. Guys, how you doing?
Great.
Good. How are you?
Mock draft day. I'm so excited.
It's right around the corner.
Yes, it
That's
is.
right.
I know again, like you said, the draft's next week, and we have been talking about it for quite some time. And again, we're just so itching to talk about the draft. And we said from last week, we're going to come up with our draft picks, and we're going to talk about that. But first, before going any further, Matt, please tell the viewers something about Matt Papiernik.
Oh gosh, something about Matt Papiernik. Where does the list start? Well, the most exciting thing about Matt Papiernik is I just welcomed my 3-week-old daughter to the world last 3 weeks ago. So that's what my life has been encompassing as I'm focusing on this NFL draft right now. So needless to say, come draft day, there will be a baby in one arm and a TV remote on the other hand.
And you are a true Steeler fan. You
Oh,
are a true Steeler fan right there. There you go.
100%, born and raised.
Guys, we have submitted our draft picks to the viewers. If you have any questions or anything, please email the show at sixsteelcityrings@yahoo.com. That's SIXSTEELCITYRINGS@yahoo.com. Guys, round one, we are going to review our picks. Okay. And here are our picks. Ladies first. Leanne, you chose. Go ahead.
I did. Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama. I told Bob my draft this year for this felt a little bit like a fever dream of like things I hope will happen. I know that everybody's very high on the Steelers going center or offensive line in the first round in this draft, but I feel like they've done a lot of work this offseason, bringing in Patrick McQueen and Dante Jackson and some of these pieces to try to fully round out the defense. And I feel like the one thing we're really missing is somebody to line up across from Joey Porter Jr. And so I think that bringing in a quarterback, I think that it's not as deep of draft for quarterbacks as it is for other offensive positions. I think that they could maybe pick those guys up a little bit later and knock defense out in the very beginning and get somebody that's really looking to be like a generational type talent. And I think that, you know, they met with Kool-Aid, they dined with him and his teammates at Alabama. And they said it was like the funniest night ever between like the players, like Kool-Aid holding court and Mike Tomlin holding court and all of them telling stories. And he's just such a smart player. He fits so well into the Steelers. And I think to have him partnered up with somebody like Joey Porter Jr., where the two of them are both so cerebral and aggressive and just don't make mistakes. You know what I mean? Young, raw talent, I think makes a lot of sense.
Bob, your pick.
Oh, I'm going chalk here, and it's a little more than that. I like Marius Mims from Georgia as my first pick. Of the tackles that are going to be available, he has the most upside. Really put a lot of stock in the reports that he's better than Andrew Thomas, that he's better than Broderick Jones. He's a natural right tackle. I think recreating the Georgia National Championship bookend tackles, who are both phenomenal athletes, could really be a dynamic fix for the Steelers' offensive line for a long time. And, you know, with Arthur Smith's offense and wanting to, you know, kind of boot out and play action, I think you really need to have two guys who can hold up on the edge. And, you know, Mims is a freak. He's probably not as accomplished as some of the other guys because he's only played 800 snaps at the collegiate level, but you just can't teach his type of talent. And I think Spencer Anderson, rather than Dan Moore, could maybe help him transition, you know, the first few games in the pros, if the reports on Anderson that he's been phenomenal in practice last season hold.
The NFL draft guru. Matt, your pick.
I went with J.C. Latham, right tackle out of Alabama. Um, I'm not sure it's necessarily 100% going to be him, but I think it's definitely going to be one of those right tackles, either Latham or one of the tackles in the draft that all seem to have their last name start with an F that are very tough to pronounce. I mean, every single one of them. I mean, you got Fuaga, you got Fotano, you got Fashanu. I mean, they couldn't make it easy on us with this one, but there's 5 tackles after alt that could all fall really anywhere from like the 8 to early 20s. I do think, Fotanu and Foshanu out of Washington and Penn State might get a little of an edge because they're both left tackles versus right tackles, like Latham. So I think Latham could fall to the Steelers or be right there to where they just have to jump. Maybe the Bengals pop up to 17, maybe to get him, just like they did with Broderick Jones last year. But Latham's just an NFL ready tackle, could pop right in on the right side. You wouldn't have any concerns about him. Honestly, I think he's probably the second best tackle in the draft behind Alt, in my opinion. The only downside is is limited to the right side. Downside for other teams, not a downside for the Steelers, considering they want Broderick Jones on the left side long term, anyways.
Okay. And my pick, I went with Zach Frazier for these particular reasons. One, of course, he's a West Virginia kid. I'm playing a little, partial here, but a little biased. Also, I got to thinking, guys. Let's go back to the days, of having great centers in the Steelers organization. Mike Webster, Damani Dawson, Marquise Pouncey, and I'll throw another one in there. Jeff Hardings. He was good for a short period of time, but he did his job. And ever since Pouncey left, we really haven't had that great of a center. And now we're in position to have a good center. JPJ, I believe he'll be gone. So my choice is Zach Frazier. Again, he is heating up as far as message boards and everything. And I truly believe, well, that's my number one pick, will be Zach Frazier if I was the GM.
Yeah, and Pete Traeger from the NFL Network put him in the first round today in his mock draft.
That's great. That's great. Guys, let's move to round two. Round two, which is pick number 51. Matt, you go first. Who's your second round pick?
I went with Roman Wilson. It's kind of pained me to do. Another fun fact about me, I'm a Ohio State alumni and big fan. So grabbing Roman Wilson in the second round definitely hurt a little bit, but he's just such a good wide receiver. He's so polished already. Such a good athlete, really, has that explosiveness in and out of his breaks. Something that I think the Steelers really need. They have George Pickens there, who great wide receiver, but that's not his style of gameplay. He's more of a down the field, uses physicality, whereas Roman Wilson's the one that's going to get the separation, especially underneath. Wasn't really utilized at Michigan super heavily, just simply because of the way their offense is. But when he got the opportunity, he was really able to, show his skill set off, and he'll just provide a element of speed and explosiveness that they don't currently have.
Bob.
Yeah, I echo the Roman Wilson. That's my second round pick as well. More tape I watched on him. I think there's real value for the Steelers in the fact that Michigan was a run first offense. He wasn't heavily featured in the passing game, but when he was explosive. That could work nicely as the second target in an Arthur Smith offense. He's a tremendous downfield threat. He's a different downfield threat than Pickens, like Matt said. Pickens is a combat catch warrior. He's faster than people think he is, but Pickens is, I'm going to catch it over you and then maybe break away and run. Wilson's just going to flat run by it. He struggles a little bit with press coverage, but he's so fast, and you're not going to put your number one corner on him with Pickens on the field. So I really think that, Wilson, at some point, if he explodes and he all of a sudden looks like he's the number one threat in the offense, maybe defenses would switch the number one corner to him. But I think they would do that at their peril. I think Wilson and Pickens are, even though he's 5'11", you think of him a little bit, maybe that's kind of a little bit undersized. I mean, he's not like Calvin Austin undersized for an Arthur Smith type pick, but he's basically about an inch and a half shorter than AJ Brown, and he's not as physical as AJ Brown, but he's a lot faster. So I love the idea of Wilson being the number 2 for the next 5 years.
Leanne.
I won't belabor the point since you picked him for your first round pick, but I had Zach Frazier for my second round pick. I do think they need to get a center. I think they can do some other creative things on the offensive line, but not with the center position. I don't think after all of the changes all the talking and stuff that's gone on about the centers this past week, I don't think that they're going to go in the first round. I think a lot of the centers are going to hang around till either very late in the first round or till the second round. And I could even see the Steelers maybe engineering some kind of a trade to move up for one of those centers earlier in the second round. But in lieu of Frazier, I also think that could be interchanged with Barton, who we talked about was, kind of a unique guy with his athleticism, although not a true center. The NFL scouts seem to think that that's what he'll play. So I think that in lieu of Frazier being available, I think Barton, who's somebody the Steelers have really liked, could go to, sort of like Matt said with his first round pick. Any of those guys.
And as for me, I chose Roman Wilson. And the reason why,
Wow, a sweep.
what's that?
I said that was almost a sweep.
Almost a sweep, yes. The reason why is because, here lately, there have been so much talk about a trade between Brandon Ayuk and the Steelers. Ayuk wants so much. So I know it's tempting to Omar Khan to make that trade. However, they don't want to give up too much. What better way to replace Deontay Johnson than Roman Wilson? I mean, it can't get any better than that at this point right now. Roman Wilson, like as you said earlier, Michigan was a run-first offense. Roman Wilson was one of those unsung heroes on that offense because, again, when the ball went his way, he was there to catch the ball. Good hands, good receivers, everything. And so I like Roman Wilson as my second pick. The only downside I'm forecasting is how would that make Calvin Austin III feel? How would that make him feel as a receiver? Because I'm sure probably one person's thinking, okay, now that Deontay Johnson's gone to Carolina, that Calvin Austin III will move up into that spot on the other side of Calvin Pickens. So, I see Roman Wilson in that spot right there, in the second spot there, second round spot there. Guys, I know we're moving pretty fast, but we got a lot to talk about still. Let's move on to round 3. And this where it's not a clean sweep. And this is where it gets real interesting from rounds 3 on. Bob, I'm going to you first. Use your third round pick.
My third round pick is the guy I consider the best center in the draft and have since the season ended. Cedric Van Pran, center from the Georgia Bulldogs. Is another Bulldog on the offensive line. Yeah, I understand. The thing I love about Cedric Van Pran is he reminds me very much of Marquise Pouncey and Dermontti Dawson in his athleticism. He's a pulling center. And I think, all due respect to Graham Barton, I don't get it. I don't see it. I do see it with Cedric Van Pran. The guy is started 40 games in the SEC, 40 games plus, center on 2 national championship teams. I just think he's a plug and play guy. And he's just sort of, all the hype with JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, Barton, Frazier, who I like. I wouldn't be upset if we got Zach Frazier at all, but I think getting center in the third round is really high value. And to me, there's 3 definite true starting centers in the draft: JPJ, Zach Frazier, and Cedric Van Pran. I think for the Steelers' run offense, do we trap as much as we used to? No. But the trap is still part of our game. And having athletic tackles out on the outside with Broderick and Marius Mims if we get him, and having Van Pran in the middle gives us some real interesting pulling options. I don't think Daniels and Sayamalo are great at pulling, but I think it would be really interesting if they could pull the center, pull the tackles, and maybe bring in, especially with all the heavy personnel that Arthur Smith likes. I think it could open up some interesting possibilities. But that's my guy. He's been my guy. I'm not going away from him. I really hope we get him. That being said, if we get Zach Frazier, we get JPJ. The only guy I am really down on is Graham Barton. I don't want, I got Kendrick Green vibes all over that. I don't want to see it.
Leanne.
My third round pick is Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver out of Texas. I just think the kid freaking flies. I think he's got the ability to work in a variety of ways on the field. He can catch deep passes. He can be on the outside. I think he's good in screen situations. So he opens up a lot of options with this new offense we have with Arthur Smith coming in. I think sort of like I was saying with Joey Porter Jr. and Kool-Aid McKinstry on cornerback position, I think you line him up against somebody like George Pickens, and I think the two of them could create some real chaos on offense.
Matt.
I ended up going with Mason Smith out of LSU. I think one of the most underrated needs for the Steelers right now is defensive line. You obviously have the three guys that are likely going to start up front with Cam, Larry Ogunjobi, and Benton, but there's not much depth behind them right now, at least not much depth that you're happy with. I mean, you got Montravis Adams, you got some other names, but no one you're truly wanting in that rotation if you had to. We saw that when Cam went down, they struggled at times. Luckily, Benton stepped up and really played well in a rookie season. And with this potentially being Cam's last year, getting a guy like Mason Smith, I think, is huge. He reminds me a lot of like Stephon Tuitt. He has that build. He's extremely long, extremely stout. And I do think, even though he has such a great build for a defensive lineman, I'm not sure he's really a fit outside of a 3-4. He played in a 4-3 at LSU, but he's not a penetrator. He's not someone who's going to shoot gaps. And I think that'll really limit his upside in some teams' minds that don't properly utilize that and don't have a 3-4 defense to take advantage of his skill set.
As for me, I chose Jeremiah Trotter Jr. The reason why is because we need a good inside linebacker that will replace, hopefully, Ron Shazier. Ever since Shazier went down, we never had that good, solid interior inside linebacker. Elandon Roberts, his injury was pretty severe, and no telling if he'll be able to come back in time for the start.
I think you mean Ray. Just to jump in, I think you mean
Yeah.
Cole Holcomb's injury.
Right.
Thank you. I'm
Or
sorry.
Quan.
I'm sorry. See how I am right now. I'm just going crazy right now, but I'm excited about the draft. So, but it's and I know they talked about this before the end of the season with Cole Holcomb as well. But Landon Roberts, he's good, solid, and Jeremiah Trotter. Again, to me, I believe he's more like a hybrid with a Ryan Shazier / James Ferrier. Physical, got speed, and that's just what we need. Of course, with that defensive line, we'll have Cam Hayward. I mean, it's just I believe if they can stop the run and everything, those linebackers, they can fill in the gap and make some plays. So I'm happy with that. Plus, I believe he can cover the running back coming out the backfield as well. Guys, let's move on to round 4.
3. Still in 3. We've got 2 picks in 3.
I'm sorry, 2 picks of 3.
Yeah.
See, I'm sleepy today. I'm sorry. The second pick in round 3, pick number 98. I'm gonna go first this time. Tyler Guyton. Now, as for me, I really focus on the first 3 picks. After that, I'm kind of way off as far as kind of, but Tyler got to me. He showed me something. I do some research on him this past week. Tyler to me shows very good athleticism. Just has a knack for the ball. Knows what he's doing. He does need a little bit polishing. And of course, if he comes to the Steelers, they will make him better. And so, I mean, he's gonna be short and sweet with him. I like this pick right here, Tyler Guyton. I think another diamond in the rough. One of those things where the Steelers always have chosen that diamond in the rough. And it's just like wide receivers. Our second pick, our almost sweep pick, round 2, of Roman Wilson. I believe this Tyler Guyton, I think he's going to be a diamond in the rough also. Give him time. Bob, your pick.
Took Jerry and Jones out of Florida State. He's a versatile corner. He's fast. Not great in man coverage in college. He's a zone corner. He could really thrive in the nickel at the pro, at least initially, at the pro level. I think with Dante Jackson and his speed on the outside, you can kind of, flip flop them around a little bit, bring him along as a man corner. And then kind of go from there. Steelers do play a lot of zone anyway. It'll be interesting to see. I really liked Max Melton, but in all the mocks I did, I just don't see how we get him at 98. And corner is a day 1, day 2 need. So, based on the corners who I was looking at who were available, this is the guy I think who approximates Melton a little bit and has some versatility, which the Steelers do value. They want their cornerbacks to be versatile, and there's upside. I mean, the guy runs 4.38. I mean, and he's playing with Joey Porter, but Porter could teach him a trick or two, and maybe he gets a lot better at man coverage.
Now, Bob, I'm going to jump in real quick. Bob, you mentioned something about the zone defense. After we make our picks, I'm going to have a roundtable discussion about the zone defense. I'm going to ask you all and get your opinions on it. Leanne, what's your pick?
My pick for the second pick in the 3rd round was Mason Smith, and my reasons are very similar to the ones Matt listed when he had him with the earlier 3rd round pick. I usually shy away from guys when they talk about them needing some time or developmental or something like that. In like the first day picks, I usually shy away from them. But all the conversations surrounding him and what I saw him do last year shows that he just needs a little bit of time and a little bit of energy put into him. He has all of the raw talent that's there to work in our defense. And I think he's somebody that could really thrive, maybe sitting behind Cam Hayward for a little bit and getting a chance to learn from one of the best in football, I think would benefit him. I was worried because he's had some injuries in 2021 and 22. He was injured both seasons, but he made it through 23 without any injuries. So hopefully those were just flukes.
Matt, your pick. It's pretty interesting. I want to hear this.
I went with Tanner Bortolini. Hopefully I said that right.
Wow.
Out of Wisconsin. It's clear. I mean, all of us, I think, have chose a center at some point here. So the Steelers definitely needed one. I didn't have one to this point. I went, other directions. And Tanner Bertolini is probably the most athletic center in the draft class, but he only has 1 year starting at center. The Wisconsin kind of moved him around a little bit earlier in his career, but started this last year at center and played really well. Definitely probably his home in the NFL. Lacks a little length, especially in his arms. He has short arms, some of the shortest in all of the draft eligible players, but at center matters slightly less compared to, say, if you were out of tackle. But overall, his athleticism is off the charts, especially for an interior lineman. Does really well, really smart center. Another guy who didn't have great length that was a great starting center for the Steelers was Marquise Pouncey. So I'm not sure the Steelers are going to be too bothered by the short arms if it comes down to it. I do think that he may need a year just to get up to speed with the NFL, so he might not be a day 1 plug and play, but you'll get that in the 3rd round.
All right, just to recap, day 1 and day 2 of the NFL draft, our picks. Leanne, you picked Kool-Aid McKinstry. Zach Frazier, Xavier Worthy, and Mason Smith. Matt, J.C. Latham, Roman Wilson, Mason Smith, and Tanner Bortoloni. Bob, Amarius Mims, Roman Wilson, Cedric Van Pran, and Jerry Jones. And my pick, Zach Frazier, Roman Wilson, Tyler Guyton, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Those are day one, day two picks that we are predicting that they're going to pick come next week. Are we ready to move on?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And this is kind of for you, Ray, and for Leanne. Do you think Tyler Guyton, who's I've seen in some mocks going in the second and the first, is gonna last until the third? And it's kind of same question for Leanne too with Xavier Worthy. The phenomenal speed, but he's all up and down the board. I mean, I've seen him. I've seen him in the first. I've seen him in the second, and I have seen him in the third. I'm just, you know, do you think it's just a speed wonder, Leanne? Is that maybe why he falls to the third?
Yeah, and he's a little bit impulsive. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's hurt his draft stock a little bit, you know, out on the field. But we saw some of that from Joey Porter Jr., where he was in college, where he's a little too grabby and a little too this, do you know what I mean? And I think those are things that we see him working on in the NFL. I think in the same way, I think he could work on that and on some of this finesse skills that he needs to work on. I picked him in the third round because I don't have a crystal ball to know what's going to happen leading up to him. And a lot of the level-headed drafts that I looked at had him available there. Even some of the mocks I ran had him available there. But like you, I did also see him going earlier. So I think it'll be maybe a little bit like some of the centers. They're all over the place. It'll be interesting to see where he actually falls.
Yeah. Tyler Guyton, to me, yes, he was, you know, kind of just erratic and everything as far as the picks and stuff. But my thing is, I'm going on the side of caution. I'm going to say I'm thinking the positive out of this, that the glass is half full. And so I believe that Tyler Guyton will be a good, solid tackle, maybe a backup to Broderick Jones. Again, I that's what we need right now. Good lineman, depth in lineman, and so because again, you know, we've seen where in the past, you know, we had to shuffle linemen, so you go from right to left and, you know, left to right, and so that right there tells me if we get him, I think that will be so good. We'll have to shift around different people playing multiple positions, which is something Pittsburgh is known to do, and they have mastered it for the most part. So to take a little break right now from our draft picks, I'm going to pose this question to you three right here. Bob, you mentioned something about the zone defense. Now, given the fact that Joey Porter Jr., you know, he's a good physical guy, he can handle himself on the island. Why, in your opinion, why all three of you, to jump in, why do you feel that the Steelers need to play that zone defense? And because we're starting to solidify ourselves, well, the team is, in defense, are they good enough to go man coverage?
Well, I mean, as far as zone defense goes, I mean, it's a long-standing, you know, part of the zone blitz. Although they don't run that scheme quite as much as they used to with LeBeau. It's gone from a hybrid to, you know, I feel like they try to play a little too much cover 2 and a little too much cover 3 when they've had the ability to go man. You know, Joey Porter Jr. is a man cover guy. He's a true cornerback one. You know, last year, Levi Wallace, Patrick Peterson, you just couldn't play man on the other side of the ball. I mean, you could maybe have Joey Porter follow the best receiver, but you couldn't just go true press man. So, you know, there's a place in the NFL for cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, and you want to disguise your defenses. You do not want to, you know, you take the Bengals, for instance. You don't want to go out and play press man on T. Higgins and Jamar Chase if the other corner is not another, you know, approximation of Joey Porter. Now, that being said, you got to mix it up here and there, but you really got to pick your poison. The pass rush, the whole idea behind the zone blitz was, that you're bringing your fourth and fifth rushers from places that teams don't expect. We're not as exotic as we used to be. We don't do that anymore, and part of that's because TJ and Alex are so good that it's better to rush 4 and drop 7 and still get the same pressure. Zone is always going to be part of your defense in the NFL. You can't just play straight man and you can't play straight zone, because if you play straight zone, then you get what Tom Brady used to do to us with the Patriots. He just carve you up. Quick short passes, boom, 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 move it down the field. You never get the ball back.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Bob. I mean, Joey Porter Jr. is obviously a man corner. And that's to be expected with his length, his physicality. But overall, you're going to mix it up. It's going to be a mix of probably 50-50, the two defenses all throughout the year. They always have, they always will. Like Bob said, they had the zone blitz for the longest time when they had LeBeau there. It's something your team needs to be versatile to play it both ways. So in today's day and age, you can't just have a zone corner or a man corner. They have to be fluid in order to and be able to play both. But I think when you have stuff like the pass rush that the Steelers do have with Watt, Highsmith, even the interior guys, and then you got an all-star safety like Minka on the back end there, it really gives you a lot of versatility and ability to mix up your defense and really put players in different positions. I mean, I don't think you're going to see all these guys just lined up in the same spot play after play and just saying we're better than you and we're going to beat you just playing man to man or just playing zone. They're so versatile on the back end now, and with that pass rush limiting time to throw, I mean, you see it anytime that other offenses truly had success. It was when Watt and Highsmith weren't getting to the quarterback because the secondary couldn't hold up on a consistent basis. So as long as that pass rush is there, I think you can continue to mix and match coverages, and then when it doesn't get there, you just hope that you got them confused a little bit on the offensive end, because in today's NFL, it's hard to consistently cover guys no matter what defense you run if your pass rush isn't getting there.
Leanne?
I don't really know what else to add. I mean, Bob and Matt kind of covered it as far as I'm concerned. I agree with them that teams tend to run a combination. I think that the Steelers need to continue to look at being creative in the defenses they run when based on the offense that they're playing against. I think that, we ran these extremely complicated defenses and under Dick LeBeau, and we don't do those kinds of things anymore. So sometimes I feel like, the offenses know our weak areas, whether it was middle linebacker or something else, and pick us apart a little bit. Obviously, I mean, any team would do it. We do it too, but target those weak areas. So I think, if they can come up with some creative plays and divide coverage, and then I think it helps to eliminate some of those dead zones.
Speaking of being creative, do you all have the trust and faith in Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator, to be that creative? Do you think?
I'll flatly say no.
Yeah.
No. Now that being said, I don't think he's a disaster. I mean, he's not. He's a decent defensive coordinator. There are times where from a personnel usage, did I want to see Keanu Benton on the field for most of the snaps? I think most effective would have been Benton on the field almost constantly. And when Cam came back, rotate Cam and Ogunjobi to kind of preserve Cam a little bit. I mean, let's face it, he's 33 years old, about to be 34. He can't play every down anymore. And Benton is young and he flashed, and I question the utilization a little bit. It's hard to blame him for the stuff with the tight ends because we were so pieced together towards the end of the season. We lost, Quan Alexander, we lost Cole Holcomb, KZ was suspended. They were just trying to put it together. But, that being said, do I love every scheme? No, I think it's too much of a hybrid of the Tampa 2. I would like to see us be more aggressive. I'd like to see an occasional blitz. I think a blitz with Alex and TJ coming off the edges and send somebody up the middle could be really effective, once or twice a game. It's where we miss a guy like Mike Hilton who was coming off the corner on the outside. You double team Alex, you double team TJ, somebody's running free, and
Right.
a nice blitz corner, which is why I really like Max Melton. I almost picked him at 84, but center was just too much of a need. I think Max Melton is a guy who could be a really interesting blitz corner in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say I think Terrell Austin's the Andy Reid of play calling on defenses
Right.
here. But he's definitely gotten a tough deal the last 2 years. He had a lot to deal with. I mean, 2 years ago losing Watt, your defense isn't going to be the same. I don't care. You lost a top 5 football player across the NFL.
And don't forget Fitzpatrick has been out for some games.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you lose Watt for, what was it, 9 games, 10 games, your defense is not the same. I mean, they didn't have a pass rush. I think they went from 50 plus sacks for 5+ years to, I think they barely reached 40 that year, if they even did that. So that's a struggle. Your pass rush couldn't get home. You didn't have the personnel either at the linebacker core. I mean, Miles Jack was an okay player in the middle that they tried to fill in. So I mean, they just didn't have that. And then last year with the linebacker issues, and then your second corners were hit or miss. I mean, as Bob said, with like the Mike Hilton blitzes and stuff like that when we used to have him on the team. Well, they got home a couple of times with Patrick Peterson getting there, and then Patrick Peterson couldn't make the play on the quarterback or whoever was in the backfield with the ball. Patrick Peterson just let him scramble out of the, no, I don't want to say let him, but he was able to get around Patrick Peterson, scramble out of the pocket, and make a play. So it's like, at some points, at times he did scheme up something, but the players just couldn't make the plays when needed. So I'm not saying he's, a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator here, but I definitely think there are worse options that could be had. And with all the turnover on offense, I don't know if this season I would have necessarily wanted to rebuild both sides of the ball all at once when you needed some consistency, at least on one side. Because I think the Steelers were still a top 5 defense last year. I'd have to relook in points allowed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you allowed less. I mean, I get they had a lot of long drives. They given up a lot of yards. I think they were bottom 10 in yards allowed. But if you're stopping them from scoring, yeah, your defense may be a little tired, so you need to improve your depth. But ultimately, that just falls on your offense then to put up points and keep your defense fresh.
I thought the
Good point.
defense took a lot of crap that really probably should have gone to the offense. Do you know what I mean? You had all these injuries, and then you've got these guys out on this field for, it seemed like as soon as they get to the sideline, we'd be 3 and out and they would have to come back in. And I just think that that's a factor. Do you know what I mean? The more snaps somebody plays, the more opportunities to have errors, the more tired guys get. And I think coupled with the injuries, I think we saw some of that. I thought that Terrell Austin last season did try to do some, like Matt said, some interesting stuff. I thought they did a better job of moving some players around and being a little creative like they did with Patrick Peterson. And, you just have to cater to the people that you have. You have to play them how they're able and not how you want to. And I think sometimes maybe that's where we fell a little bit short. Wasn't the best personnel out there for what they were trying to do.
Leanne, you hit the nail on the head. It took a lot of crap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
Some of it well deserved. I'm like Matt, I'm not saying that he's any kind of like crazy NFL defensive guru, but I felt like how do you totally assess him when like every time it's like all these injuries and then they're out so often. So I feel like, it was like Matt, I was glad to see that he's back this year rather than trying to rebuild the whole team. We'll see how he does.
Yes.
See if it's better.
Guys, let's move to round 4. Moved round 4, pick number 119. Again, this is where it gets interesting in a lot of rounds, latter picks. So it does get interesting. And of course, you do find some gems, but it does get interesting. Leanne, I'm gonna go back to you. Your
Okay.
pick in round 4.
My pick for round 4 is Trevin Wallace, linebacker out of Kentucky. I think, we addressed that as a major need by bringing Patrick Queen in. And so I think this is an opportunity to bring in somebody younger to kind of help get him situated, help him learn. I think he's got a lot of upside and very little downside, but he definitely needs needs some time in the NFL to develop before he's put out as a starter. He's not a day one starter.
Bob,
Well, first of all, this guy's only available because of his recent legal trouble. Devondre Sweat out of Texas is a physical freak. And if the concerns about his DUI drop him around, or maybe two, and he's still sitting there, I don't think I totally agree with Matt and Leanne about defensive line being a sneaky need. I would strongly consider him in the third too, but I think if he slips to day three, the Steelers have to do what they got to do to get him because he's a borderline. He's been as high as a first round talent in mocks before his legal trouble. I mean, late first round. I mean, solid second round until he had his legal issues. And the guy is a beast. I mean, I think Keanu Benton has really shown that he can play the end in the 3-4. They kind of thought he was going to be the nose coming out of Wisconsin, and he still has value there. But I think he has more value as one of the ends. And I think Devondre is really a guy like Casey Hampton was out of Texas who can play the nose. Totally different players. He's much bigger than Casey, but you just don't see guys like this. I mean, last year I was all for if Jalen Carter somehow slipped down the draft like people were talking about before that got ended very quickly and the Eagles took him. I mean, that's a guy that, this is the kind of talent you get in the fourth round where you steal a second rounder with character concerns. And the one thing I will say about Mike Tomlin is if he's comfortable with him, then I'm totally comfortable with him because I don't think anybody does a better job than reaching and molding young players than Tomlin.
Matt,
I agree with Bob on that one. I like Sweat a lot. I know he has his DUI or whatever, but so does like half of our elected officials. So, I think he can still produce on a football field. But ended up going here with Cam Hart, corner out of Notre Dame. I really think that this cornerback class this year is kind of hard to judge. I think if you don't take one in the first round, you kind of, or you might want to wait a little bit to see who you get in the later rounds, just because I think there is a fall off after the first round talent, like how Leanne took Kool-Aid in the first round. But Cam Hart here, he's a big, long, physical corner. 6'3", over 205 pounds. Has really good athletic ability, decent speed, decent instincts. He has a couple concerns where he's gotten beat deep in college, but he was really given, a lot of responsibilities covering team's best wide receivers and asked to, play tight coverage. So I can't put it all on him, especially considering this last year. He cleaned that up just a little bit. He didn't allow any touchdowns, did pretty well overall. But I said this corner class after the first and maybe early second round, I'm really skeptical on a lot of them, but I think the Steelers really need to add to that room. After trading, with Carolina to add some depth, it still is a room I am not very high on at the moment, but it's tough when, you end up with a draft class that doesn't have a premium of players throughout the middle rounds.
guys, I'm going to go with Michael Hall Jr. out of The Ohio State University. I'm going to play this confession. I'm coming to a confession right now. I hate the Buckeyes. I hate them. But this right here is not a bad pick. And plus, this would be a good pick to where Cam can groom him. And I believe if the Steelers were to draft him, I mean, Cam would take him under his wing. I mean, just think about how solid that defensive line would be. I mean, to think, Keanu Benton, Michael Hall. I mean, just those two right there, just a name right there. I know we played 3-4, but those two solid picks right there, I believe that could be a dangerous tandem to begin with in the near future. So I didn't, like I said, the latter picks for me, I kind of slept on them, but then I kind of open one eye and did some research. But Michael Hall Jr., pretty good, pretty stout, and pretty solid for the defense in Ohio State.
So you want baby Cam to go with baby TJ from last year?
I would, yeah, I would say so, yeah. Guys, let's move to round 6, pick number 178. Matt, you go first.
Yeah, I went with I guess I don't know how to technically say his first name. Aeneas is how I'm gonna say it. Aeneas Smith out of Texas A&M. In my opinion, he's the Calvin Austin replacement. Both are very similar players, and I say replacement. Let me qualify. Calvin Austin is a fine player, but he hasn't been what they want him to be. Besides the one long ball last year that they then tried running 8 more times throughout the year unsuccessfully, he really hasn't done a whole lot outside of the return game. And I'm not sure if that's improper usage or him himself, but he's now going into his 3rd year. It's going to start being questioned if, what his upside and what his role is in the offense, especially with a new offensive coordinator. So someone like Aeneas Smith here, I think can really come in and be that same kind of player. Both, smaller builds. He's only, 5'9", 190 if you keep the helmet on him while he's standing on the scale. But really quick twitched, really versatile. I mean, played at A&M, so he played against some of the better competition throughout the league, and then was technically a wide receiver, but they used him in the backfield a lot too. They just wanted to get the ball in his hands, wanted to find ways because he is an explosive player. Last year averaged almost 20 yards per catch. He's just someone that any play could take it the distance. And this late in the draft, you're looking for someone that you can hit a home run with. And I think he gives you that ability. He's also a very willing blocker. So if you line up in the slot, you're at least going to get someone attempting to block the guys. I know some people got on some other wide receivers on the Steelers. I'm not going to mention any names for, lack of effort at times. So you won't have that with Smith, whether or not he's actually able to make the block because he might be giving up 50 pounds to whoever he has to line up against. But I think it's someone that this late, he's someone you could take a flyer on and hope he is someone that can give you a spark within that offense, any play.
Leanne?
I went with Javon Solomon, edge rusher out of Troy. I think because he played at Troy, he didn't get quite as much attention as some other players at the same position. He is a little bit undersized, and that's kind of worked against him some in defense. But he's shown to have really good instincts, really good football smarts. He's sort of a ball hawk. He's always there. The whistle blows, and he's there somewhere in the mix. He's got like a nice low center of gravity, so there's a little more difficulty moving him out of the way, even though he's not huge. And I think, with the injury to TJ Watt, I think it's worth taking a late round chance to try to find somebody that we can start molding to be back there in the depth chart.
So as for me, I went with Bo Braid. The Steelers, to me, they sometimes get lucky drafting a player out of Maryland. Guys, he's a defensive back. Maryland played pretty good. They had a pretty good season this year. They gave Michigan a little bit of run for their money until Michigan just kind of opened up the floodgates and just here comes the ass whipping. So Maryland, for the most part, they did pretty good as a team. And Bo Braid, to me, I believe he'll be a good backup. He'll be a good backup for, let's say, Minka, at the safety position, or maybe he could play the corner, just for depth. But I went with Bo as a Big Ten pick. That's it for me for my 6th round pick number 178. Bob,
Don't forget Bob.
Well, if you guys you've heard me say this name before on previous podcasts, Tyron Hopper, linebacker out of Missouri, second team All SEC. He's a thumper. there's some holes. I mean, he's not an every down linebacker, but you got Patrick Queen to be your every down linebacker and in your sub packages. So having a guy, and I think a Landon Roberts gives you a little time to let him develop into the thumper next to Patrick Queen. And, Ray, you mentioned Shazier earlier. I think Patrick Queen is going to fill the Shazier role. And when the Steelers, the last time we had really good, effective inside linebackers was Shazier and Vince Williams. And Vince Williams was the thumper. Shazier was the do everything guy. I thought your pick of Jeremiah Trotter was awesome. I love Trotter, and if you put Trotter and Patrick Queen next to each other, you could just be dominant at linebacker for a long time. That being said, I hate to say it because I really like the guy and Mark Robinson, but I think that experiment needs to be over. I would rather have a guy who played linebacker in college, was an all SEC guy. Robinson was a converted running back for those who don't know. He certainly flashes a lot of potential, and it just doesn't seem after 2 seasons he's figured it out. Maybe season 3 changes things, but I think bringing a guy like Hopper who could maybe help you on special teams, also kind of be that third rotational linebacker, and eventually, I think he could eventually become the linebacker next to Queen. And Vince Williams was a late round draft pick who developed over a couple years on special teams and moved in. So I see a lot of similarities between Hopper and Vince Williams. I don't know if he's as physical as Vince, but I really like him as a late round pick. I wouldn't want to pick him in the third or fourth. And if you told me he had to start right away, we wouldn't be addressing it this late. I don't think the Steelers need a starting linebacker at this point, but they do need an inside linebacker long term.
All right. Going to the last pick, 6th round, pick number 195. Close to the famous 6th round, pick number 199. And you know who that person was? Tom Brady, the Steeler killer. Guys,
Or as I like to refer to him, Giselle's husband, ex-husband now.
Yeah, ex-husband at this point.
Ex-husband.
guys, I know again in the late round picks, it does get kind of slim pickings, and there's always we're digging and reaching for it. But again, we're gonna all this together, okay? We're gonna do this right here. Matt, starting with you. Give me your pick. Give me 3 reasons why on your pick.
I went with Mark Perry, safety out of TCU. One, he's a smart and a good leader. 5th-year player, smart. Led a TCU defense to the national championship. He's a big rocked up safety, 6 foot, good build, 215 pounds, can be a physical presence coming downhill. 3, he's a sure tackler, wraps up, makes his big hits, isn't afraid to, take on tight ends over the middle or anything. Has a special teams appeal early in his career.
Leanne.
I went with Evan Williams, the safety out of Oregon. I think he had transferred from Fresno State. I think he was at Fresno State in 22 and transferred to Oregon. He had a slightly better season when he was at Fresno State. Oh, I'm supposed to be given 3 reasons. He plays rough like a linebacker. He's good downfield, and he's got a lot of upside for special teams.
Bob.
Another one of my favorites. If you followed us, I can't believe he was still around at this pick, so I picked him. Dwight McGlothern, cornerback, Arkansas. Reason number 1, he's not this guy. So when I say this name, please, older Steeler fans, don't freak out. He's not Mel Blount, but he reminds me of Mel Blount. He's 6'3". He's 4'40". Is he as fast as like a Cam Hart or some of the other top corners? No, but he's huge, and he reminds me a lot of the Corey Trice pick. Although I think he's even better than Corey Trice. is a man cover guy. And if we're going to pick, Dante, or if we're going to have Dante Jackson from Carolina, who's incredibly fast, not necessarily a great press corner, and Jerry Jones, who I think can fit in as the nickel, I think we need to get a guy we can develop, number two, as a press man corner so that you can put him on the field. And number three, you can't teach size. The guy, I mean, you cannot. The Steelers have been trending towards bigger corners since Omar Khan took over. Corey Trice 6'3", Joey Porter is 6'1", long. Darius Rush is 6'1". Corey Trice is 6'3". I like the idea of that. And if we pick Jerry Jones, he's 6 feet tall. I like the idea of bigger corners. If the NFL is going to go to this, pass every down, the way to get your pass rush home is give a little press at the beginning. And I think if you give TJ and Alex an extra half second while they're pressing, they're going to get home. If they don't get home, you're going to get burned. You're going to give up touchdowns. But guess what? I'd rather give up 7 in 10 seconds than give up 7 in 5 minutes.
All right. My pick, Sean Stevens. And this is a sleeper pick, a much sleeper pick. Sean Stevens, who is in relation to Joey Porter Jr. He is he's a D1 player. Lost his eligibility because his mother passed away, and he tried to get it back. The NCAA said no. So of course, right now he's playing with emotions right now. So he is coming out of West Liberty University here in West Virginia. Another one. And let me tell you all something. There's a lot of talent here in West Virginia. It's one of those, you got to search high and low. I mean, really, but there's some talent here in West Virginia. And people didn't think about that about Randy Moss until, he has a gold jacket. But Sean Stevens, again, in relation to JPJ, if the Steelers would have drafted him and put him on the other side, I believe Sean Stevens will play with so much emotion. I think he would go above and beyond, maybe run through a brick wall for Mike Tomlin. And those are my three right there. But again, I want to go with want to pick a player, not a D1 player, but like a Division I 2A or Division II player that is good enough to play at the next level. And there you have it. There are picks. The 2024 mock draft.
So everybody got a center at some point, and everybody got a wide receiver, and it's interesting. You guys all went defensive line. It's amazing how much the needs are so similar, and we picked them. A couple of just draft tidbits. Ray, you picked Zach Frazier in the first round. The Steelers have only picked one center in the first round in 87 years. That was Marquise Pouncey. So if Zach Frazier does Marquise Pouncey, I think we could live with a potential Hall of Fame guy.
Yeah.
And then I think Pac-12. I think Leanne picked one of the Pac-12 guys, if I remember right.
The
6th round. That would break the Juju streak. They haven't picked a player out of the Pac-12 since Juju. And
we had talked about that briefly when we talked about them possibly picking JPJ a couple of weeks ago, that it's not their normal MO. But everybody keeps reminding me, and I think this is a good point, that we have to stop looking at everything through the lens of what the Steelers used to do, because Omar Khan is not Kevin Colbert. You know what I mean? So just because they tend to historically do something, we've already seen Khan doing a lot of things that Colbert didn't do or wouldn't do. So who knows what other changes are in store for us.
Give it time.
Yeah, I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles approach to defense and translating it to offense with my picks. It may seem like it's best available Bulldog at all times, but hey, it's working for Philly's defense.
Yeah, totally agree.
Matt, your thoughts? Final thoughts?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where these pieces fall. I feel like the months leading up to the draft, pieces move so much, and then in the last week, everyone starts to fall into place. And it's like I want to know what games the media are playing to really move all these
Yeah.
people around to give everyone, such crazy high and low draft possibilities, and then all of a sudden in the week leading up, everyone's like, okay, that person's going here, oh, that person's going there. It really lines up, so it'll be interesting. I do think that if one of the top tackles aren't there, I think the Steelers will look to trade back. I do think they want to tackle early on. A lot of the interviews that they've had for their top 30 kind of shown that. So I do think if the Latham and a lot of all the Fs are gone, I do think they try to trade back because I do think 20 is probably a little high for Mims just based on, him only having 8 college starts.
Yeah.
But I do think he has the upside. But I do think you could trade back and get someone like him, and I think they would be happy to do that, to trade back a few picks and either add a third or second, and then trade it up in some of those middle rounds to get another player they want. Maybe a Zach Frazier in the early second round or something. So I think there's movement to be had, and I would not be surprised at all to see multiple trades for the Steelers this year, especially if they trade back, because then they'll have the ammunition to trade up.
I have a question for everybody. There's a lot of rumors that Arizona is looking to get the Steelers 20, and they'd give up 27 and maybe the 66th. The question is, could the Steelers pry 33 out of them if they gave up 51? So if the Steelers could do 20 and 51 for Arizona, 27 and I think it's 33 or 35, but you basically have 2 picks very close to the wraparound pick like they got with Joey Porter. Would you guys do that trade?
No, no, I wouldn't.
I think that depends on what they're really
Yeah.
thinking about doing with that first round pick. Like not knowing that makes it hard for me to want to, you know what I mean, to say yes to something. I'm not out on it.
Thank you, Leanne, right there. Exactly. I'm sorry. It's unsure for me. I'm sorry. Keep what you have. I'm sorry.
I
But I'm
probably
a
do it.
gambler, so I like
Yeah.
gambling a little
Yeah.
bit.
I'm with
Yeah.
Leanne on that. I mean, I make Vegas trips routinely for college basketball gambling, so gambling's in my blood. But I would probably do that. I mean, you're moving up 14 spots in the second round, or 16 spots. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, and that's a big gap. I think that would then allow you to maybe pair, someone like Mims with Frazier or some combination along those lines. Maybe the Frazier and Guyton combination or something along those lines. But I'm not sure that trade would even be on the table. I think
Yeah.
most likely, I do agree Cardinals are a good trade back because I think they have a lot of picks and they're looking to make another splash in the first round after their number 4 pick. But I think most likely you get something like their 71 paired with it, which is early third round. And then that allows you then have 3 third round picks where you could move up in the second yourself and find who you want. Or even use that 119 to move up if you only need to move up a couple of spots in the second. So I think it gives you a lot of flexibility. So I do think it makes sense, especially if, like I said, all the top tackles and the top corners are gone. Both those positions, though, I think one of the top corners or one of the top tackles will fall to them.
Yeah, and the rumor that's been floated is they give up 27 and I think it was 66, it might be 71 to get just 20, and we keep 51. So what I think if they did it, and I wouldn't put this past Khan, is to say, okay, look, you basically have the picks eight picks apart. I mean, to me, pick 35 is another first round pick. So you're trading kind of a 2 for 1. Yeah, you may be giving up 51, but I think you're guaranteeing yourself you get Frazier, JPJ in that. And like Matt said, do I think Mims might fall into 27? Yes. Then again, maybe a guy like a Donnie Mitchell, is in the mid 20s and falls to you. And you address the wide receiver need. Steelers haven't picked a wide receiver in the first round since Antonio Holmes, but Donnie Mitchell played with George Pickens at Georgia. He reminds me a lot of George Pickens when you watch him run routes. He's faster than George Pickens. That could be a really interesting first and second round pick if you paired up JPJ and the Donnie Mitchell, and then maybe address tackle a little later with a guy like Blake Fisher.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say about Mitchell, pairing him and Pickens with their personalities in that wide receiver room,
Woo,
whew, watch out.
Toxic.
Yeah.
get ready.
Those that you're,
It'll give
you're-
us lots to write about.
yeah, you're going to have the most jawing back and forth between wide receivers and corners, and
Yeah.
hell, maybe wide receivers and their coaching staff.
Right.
They got along at Georgia. I mean, they, you know,
Oh, I
they-
think they'll get along great.
Oh, they're
It's-
friends. Yeah, I don't
they'll
think
be
that's
great.
it.
the coaches might not like it.
Guys, episode 11 in the books. Great episode, great talk. Leanne, Bob,
That
thank
was
you.
fun. Thank you, guys.
Matt, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for
By
having
this
me.
time next week, we'll know who we got in the first round.
Woohoo!
Exactly,
I
exactly.
know I'm gonna have to take days off work so I can just glue myself in front of the TV.
There you go.
Right.
Guys, again, oh, I'm sorry. Matt, you will learn this, okay? Bob, what should you do?
Like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notifications.
Yes.
Leanne?
Like, share, and subscribe. And please email us if you have any questions or comments or things you'd like to talk about.
Matt, you're excused because you're a rookie. It's okay.
Like, share, and subscribe. That's what I got. I got like,
Woo,
share, and
he's a-
subscribe.
He's a pro.
There we go.
There you go. And again, you can email the show at 6steelcityrings@yahoo.com. That's SIXSteelCityRings@yahoo.com at the bottom of the screen. Guys, thank you all for coming on. Let's look forward to this next week where we can chop it up and talk more Steelers football. You all take care. Have a good day.